Hi, welcome back to the farm. My name's Roz, also known as Passion Flower, and you'll find me here each week talking about my farming and creative life. The end of last week and the start of this week was still quite dry. Since then, we've had quite a lot of rain, and the days have been really misty wet, and the paddocks have gone back to being really boggy and wet. But there was a few days there where things started to dry out just a little bit. So I took the opportunity to weed the path out in the shed garden and also to trim around the tanks and to spray the weeds there as well, just to keep everything down away from the pump and the tanks. And I also jumped on the ride-on mower and mowed my backyard, which had been quite a while. Just over winter, it wasn't growing as quickly, so I didn't have to do it as frequently, and I'd kind of put it off a little bit. It was a bit high. It wasn't too bad though. So I got in there and got it done fairly quickly. I was a little bit hesitant on the mower to begin with. I haven't ridden it enough to be really comfortable with it. And I was finding it hard before to be able to reach the pedal to be able to start and stop it properly. But what I did this time is put a cushion in behind my back, so it pushed me forward, and that made it so much easier. And then I was able to really comfortably ride it and drive and get everything cut nice. So I did enjoy it in the end. So once the grass gets a little bit higher again, I will be back in there to get it nice and clean and low. I left it a little bit higher because it was still reasonably wet. I also pruned a plant that was out here in the shed garden. It was getting quite big and stringy. I think it's too big for the space. It was kind of taking over everything, growing out over the rhubarb, growing out over the other flowers that I had there. So I've trimmed it right back to nothing now that it stopped flowering. I'm going to see if I can get it to bush up a little bit more rather than spread out, but that just may not be what the plant is. I have no idea what it is. Mum found it somewhere and planted it there. She's been collecting cuttings from everywhere and just popping them in the garden, which is totally fine, and it makes for a really nice sort of cottagey feel. But this one just doesn't seem to be working in the position that it's in. So I'm going to see how it goes now that it's cut right back. And if it doesn't work, I'll end up digging it out. Last week, I talked about maybe finding a temporary fencing solution to be able to move the sheep into the grass area here by the shed so that they have an alternative grazing area. Now, what I have done is I've bought some more of the wire mesh that we're currently using for their paddock. And I think what we'll do is just use star pickets and sort of make a little temporary enclosure area in here somewhere, and then just sort of corral them in, hopefully with some grain, and they'll just chase me, and let them in there for a few days or during the day for a few days, and then be popping them back into their paddock where their shelter is for the evenings. That will give them additional feed, something exciting and different, and give the paddock where they are a bit of a rest, because it is, as I said, it's been raining quite a bit and it is quite muddy. The grass is growing slowly and they are enjoying the hay that I've been giving them, but it would be nice to give them some fresh, longer green grass. I dyed some more DK yarn this week, getting ready for the next Tea Time Yarn retreat coming up in a couple of weeks. I dyed some of my most popular colorways on DK. So I have got some Sitting Pretty, some Gumball Machine, some Fuchsia, which still needs to be reskeined, and some Winter Sunrise. So I am just in the midst of finishing rescanning and labeling these, and then they will be up in the shop, and I'll also be taking them with me to the market. The other thing I've been working on business-wise this week is making sure that I'm updating all of my recipes for my colorways into my OneNote system, which I've talked about before. And I've also had an idea of how it will be easier to follow my recipes while I'm actually like dyeing, like during the dye process. So rather than have my iPad and be flicking them through the different recipes in OneNote, so flicking from page to page, more recently what I've been doing has been to write out the instructions for each color onto a post-it note and then put that post-it note above the pot where that particular dye batch is being dyed up. And then as I do a step, I'm crossing it out. And that's been working really well. It's kept me on track to know where I am with everything. And then I can move the post-it if I move that pot to another one of the cookers. And I can sort of go and sort of do other things and come back and know where I'm up to and not be flicking through the different pages in OneNote to find which stage of the recipe I'm at. So what I think I'm going to do is now buy some index cards and write all of the recipes out really clearly and in the same format onto an index card, laminate that card, and then I can use like a whiteboard marker to like mark off the stages as I go, or any other notes sort of for that particular batch. And then when I'm done with that batch, I can scrub that clean, I can put it away, and then I can bring it out and use it again next time. And I don't have to worry about it getting wet or damaged or having to rewrite it out over and over again or flick back and forth between different recipes on my iPad. And I've got these clips, magnetic clips, so I can stick those to the side of the shed, and I can just clip the index card up so that I can clearly see them as I am doing all of my dyeing. So I've started the process of updating all of the recipes because I still want to have like an electronic master version that's backed up to the cloud and is all safe so that I don't lose any of my recipes. So I'm going back through my hand notes at the moment and making sure that everything has been recorded. I still keep my original handwritten notes just in case I need to go back to them for any reason. And then I will have these index cards, which I will begin to work on to build up. So as I start to dye each of those colors again, I will put them onto the card to begin with, and then that will be my working document, sort of like recipe cards, I guess, that you would use in the kitchen. Today I am wearing the Fehlerab. I think that's how you pronounce it. It's a German word which I think means something to do with a caterpillar. I knit it back in 2018. It is a sort of off-center triangular shawl which has these holes through it. And what you do is one end is quite narrow and you weave the narrow end through the holes and it keeps it nice and secure around your neck. It took me a little while to figure out how to wear it, but I think I've got it now so that it doesn't strangle me, but it just holds everything really well. So it's good for when you're sort of out and about and moving around because it doesn't fall off in any way. It's all contained without having to tie a knot in it, and it fits really nicely. I'm also wearing my Miranda, which you've seen before. Again, this and my flax have sort of become my winter uniform around here, which I'm glad. I'm getting a lot of wear out of them and they're so warm and comfortable. Well, big news. I finished my Douglas cardigan. It is now blocking. It's not quite dry yet. I put it out to block a couple of days ago. It has had some sun on it during the day, although it has been rainy. It's sort of been like rainy and then sun. So it's not doing too badly, but I think it'll take a few more days before it's 100% dry. I feel like I had to block it quite severely. The back fit well, but the front seemed to be too narrow. I wanted a bit more room in the front and I wanted it to be easily buttoned up. And I didn't feel like there was enough fabric across the front for it to be able to overlap properly. So it has been stretched out quite a bit at the front. And if I was to make it again, which I've sort of talked about potentially doing, so I'll see how this one actually fits and wears, I would for sure cast on more stitches for the front so that I didn't have to block it quite so hard to give it a much more relaxed fit. I don't know if other people have experienced this problem, but or maybe it's just me and how I like to wear my cardigans. And having it be a bottom up, which is not something that I frequently do, I found it difficult to sort of know if it was going to be right until it was done. Whereas with top down, you can sort of fudge it a little bit and add as you go. Whereas I didn't feel like I could do that with the bottom up because you kind of start with the amount of stitches you're supposed to have for that, and I don't know, it just didn't, for me, I couldn't work out if it was going to fit properly from the beginning. I've already talked about how I altered the sleeves. I knit more, but from the underarm to the top than the pattern called for my size. I think I ended up going up 2 sizes. So then I cast on additional stitches around the armhole, and I didn't decrease as many stitches down the arm either. I kept it quite baggy, and then the cuff really draws it in at the end. So my sleeves are quite puffy compared to like this jumper, which is reasonably tight. And I did that intentionally. I just wanted it to be a lot of room and for it to be a real layering piece and to be able to put things in underneath it. What else? I'm looking at it. It's sitting over here. I knit the button band differently to how it was called for in the pattern. In the pattern, it had the button band knit as a strip and then sewn on with mattress stitch. I knit it on, and I think that was a quicker way to do it for sure. I'm not a big fan of sewing in ends or sewing things up, so for me, the knitting on was much easier. When I got to the back of the neck, I thought about trying to switch it so that I started from the bottom of the other side and went up to the neck and then did a 3-needle bind off in the middle so that the joined knit stitches around the edge of the button band were facing the same way. I played around with it for a little while and decided that it was going to be too difficult, so just continued all the way around the second side. I've done the buttonholes, but I haven't chosen or sewn on buttons yet. I'm going to wait and see how it goes once I have finished blocking it and how it sits, and then maybe even choose to not put buttons on at all. I have not really decided yet. So, but I've blocked it so that it should close and that the button bands match up in the middle, that I can put the buttons on and that they won't be too much of a pull when it's closed. I want it to be quite a relaxed fit when it's closed. So maybe, depending on how I go, I could be wearing it next week, maybe not with the buttons on it, but I can show it to you finished rather than just the flat version that is blocking at the moment. As a reminder, I used my own Harvest DK yarn, and I created that color, which I'm calling denim, which is little pops of sort of purples and light blues with an overwash of grey and brown, very light. I've now created rust and forest in a very similar style of dye, which I think would make really great garments as well. Now for what I'm working on this week, I did a little bit more on my opal hearted socks. They are getting to my sort of regular length that I go to. So I will be binding this one off shortly and I will start the second one. And because I finished something, I started something new, and I was inspired by all of the yarn that I bought at Bendigo. I showed you all of that yarn last week, and now I've already balled 2 skeins up and I have started a project. So I am using the Wagtail Yarns Kid Mohair 4-ply, and I'm also using Melbourne City Dye Works in the Shock Me colorway in her sock yarn. So 2 4-plies. So that makes about a worsted weight yarn, so a 10-ply. So it's like 4 plus 4, and then you add 2. So that's sort of how you work out, if you're combining yarns together, what weight of yarn you end up with. So what I'm doing, I'm just going to carefully get this out because it's close on the needles. I am making a Graham beanie. It is a free pattern on Ravelry. It is pretty much just a broken rib. But what I'm doing is I am combining the 2 strands of yarn together in different ways. So I started with just the Shock Me on the bottom. Then I did just the 2 strands of the Wagtail yarn, which is called Vartil Orchid. It's a bit of a tricky colorway to say. Then I just went back to the pink. Then I took 1 strand of the pink and 1 strand of the teal orchid color. Then I've knit the knits in in the pink and the pearls in the teal. Then I've done a couple of rows of just the teal, and now I've started to do the knits in the teal and the pearls in the pink. So I've got, hang on, I need to get closer so I can show you properly. So you can see how, so I'm doing the same texture except for the brim. The brim was just 1x1 rib, and now I'm doing the broken rib. But you can see how holding the different yarns together in different ways is creating different patterning. I think it looks really cool. So I'm having fun just experimenting with how the colors look when you change which two yarns are being held together. And this is knit up really quickly. I just started this 2 days ago. So I am keeping my balls in the little yarn pockets that I got from Yarn Creative from Bendigo as well, to keep the yarns away from each other so they're easy to untangle, and it's also making them so they don't get all fluffy. They're staying nice and smooth, and I'm able to pull from both ends and they just kind of roll around inside the bag and don't go anywhere. So that's been really great. So I'm super enjoying how these colors are changing and knitting up in different ways. I think I'm going to do a section about the same as this bit here with the pearls and knits the opposite way, and then I'm going to go back to just combining the two colors, so the top of the beanie will be just this. But I'll see how it plays out once I've done a little bit more. Well, that's it for another week. Thanks for spending some time with me. If you're enjoying these videos, please give me a thumbs up and subscribe to my channel. I look forward to seeing you next week on the farm. Bye.